Hello my crafty friends, this is Monica from Allsewpetite. In this tutorial I will walk you through how to make the Alice bucket bag and Alice backpack. To make the Alice bucket bag or backpack, you will need to purchase the pattern from my website. I will include the links to the pattern and all supplies I used in this tutorial in the description box below. The pattern comes with two options. You can either make this adorable mini bucket bag or a cute mini backpack. Both versions feature 3D zipper pocket on the front with built-in card slots. There is a sturdy base with rounded corners, and you have an option to install bag feet or use a piping for added detail. Alice backpack comes with a flap which also can be embellished with piping and is secured with magnetic snap closure. There is a handle on the back and adjustable shoulder straps. Alice bucket bag has D-ring connectors on each side where you can clip on your adjustable crossbody strap. There is a trim on the top with 12 eyelets, drawstring strap and a stopper so you can close your bag or a backpack with ease. The main compartment is fully lined and features slip pockets so you can organize your smaller belongings, plus additional connector for your keys. Alice bucket bag and backpack is large enough to hold a book, wallet, small makeup pouch and so much more. If you want to learn how to make the Alice bucket bag and backpack, then keep on watching. To find out exactly how to print and assemble the pattern, check out my other video where I explain everything in more details. To complete today's project, you will need external fabric and lining fabric. Because Alice bucket bag and backpack was designed to be more of a slouchy style, I would highly recommend using more sturdy fabrics such as cork, vinyl, faux leather or cotton canvas. Today I'm using faux leather for my external pieces, and as an accent I'm using cotton canvas. And for my lining I'm using waterproof fabric for the main pieces and accent cotton fabric as well. There are only a couple of places where we're going to use stabilizer. The base of your bag or a backpack, a front pocket, and if you are making a backpack, also on the flap. For the flap and the front pocket, I would recommend using something like Decovil Light or maybe Decovil Heavy, depending on the fabric. And on the base, I would use more heavyweight, beefy and more sturdy stabilizers such as Pelon Peltex, foam stabilizer, otherwise double up the amount of the lightweight stabilizer. If you are going to use a quilting cotton or similar fabric that is very lightweight, I would highly advise to interface the fabric with the woven interfacing first and then apply something like fusible fleece, just to give the fabric a little bit of more stability. You will also need number 5 zipper. The measurement is provided in the sewing instructions. And if you are using metal zipper like me, you might want to remove the teeth from the seam allowance on both ends and maybe use a lighter around those two edges to stop them from fraying. You'll also need a ruler to take some measurements. A piping is optional, so you can either buy a ready-made piping like this one here, and if you prefer to make your own piping, you will need to get a cord or a rope and then cut additional strip of fabric. I have a separate video tutorial to show you how I've made mine. You will also need a swivel hook. If you are making Alice backpack, you will need only one swivel hook for the key connector. However, if you are making Alice bucket bag, you will need 3 of them. 2 for the strap and 1 for the key connector. You will also need 2 D-rings and 2 strap adjusters if you are making Alice backpack, or just a single strap adjuster if you are making Alice bucket bag. This is optional, but I advise using stay tape to stabilize the fabric around the front pocket. You might need some multi-surface glue or a fray check glue. I will be also using some rivets today. And if you want, you can also add some purse feet to your bag or a backpack. When making the backpack version, you will also need a set of magnetic snaps. You can also use a press snap or a turn lock. A double-sided tape is needed today. especially if you cannot press your fabric. Your favorite marking tools. A seam ripper is always good to have on hand in case if something goes wrong. Snips, scissors. We'll need some eyelets or grommets today. We'll need 12 of them. I'm using eyelets with washers in this tutorial. However, if you have a grommet that looks like this with a couple of screws, or a grommet like this when you have to push them together, it's fine as well. A 1 centimeter or 12 millimeters eyelets are best for this project. However, you can use smaller or larger eyelets if you want, as long as your drawstring or cording can go through. To install those eyelets, you need a special tools. So you might have tools like this that comes in a toolkit, which means you need a hammer to install them. Or if you have a hand press, you might want to get a specific die for your eyelet. You'll need some pins and clips to hold your fabric in place. An owl, corner shaper, and hem jumper are useful tools that I like to have on hand. You might need a hand needle and a thread to close the opening in the pocket. And to personalize your bag or backpack, you might want to add a metal tag or a woven label inside your lining. You will need to cut 4 top trims from external fabric, 1 gusset from external fabric and 1 from your lining fabric, 1 drawstring strap from your external fabric, 1 pocket trim from non-fraying fabric, 1 strap connector from external fabric, 1 front pocket from external fabric and 1 from your lining fabric, 1 stopper from external fabric, 1 base from external fabric, 1 back from external fabric, 1 front from external fabric. Make sure you cut out the window as indicated on the pattern piece. 1 key connector from your lining fabric, 1 card slot piece from your lining fabric, 2 side panels from your lining fabric, 1 base lining from your lining fabric, 1 back lining from your lining fabric, 1 front lining from your lining fabric, 2 slip pockets from your lining fabric. If you are making backpack, you will need to cut 2 strap pieces, and if you are making the Alice bucket bag, you will only need to cut 1. And additionally, cut 2 flap pieces from your external fabric, 1 handle from external fabric, and 1 back trim from external fabric whenever you're making the backpack version. Once your pattern pieces are cut, fused and stabilized, make sure you transfer all the notches, midpoints as indicated on the pattern pieces, and other markings such as snap placement or a placement of your eyelets or grommets. Take your slip pockets and place them wrong sides together. So my fabric is very similar on both sides, but I've marked it with some X on the wrong side so I know. So you're going to place them wrong sides together, line up on all sides, and then you can just clip all around. Okay, feel free to add a woven label at this point. Then you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to baste the pocket around all sides using 2 mm seam allowance. Once you've got that basted, you're going to take your pocket trim, draw a line in the center and apply some double-sided tape on each side. You're going to peel the plastic cover. Then you're going to take your pocket and we're going to finish the top edge of the pocket with our pocket trim. So you're going to line up that edge of the pocket along that line in the center. Stick it to your double-sided tape, then fold the pocket trim in half and cover that raw edge. Now we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to top stitch close to the edge. Next you're going to take your front lining piece and with right side facing up, so the pocket and the front lining are facing up. You're going to place the pocket on top and we're going to center it and line up along that bottom edge. So match your midpoints. Don't worry about lining the sides. The front lining is at a slight angle, so it will be slightly narrower. So just clip that pocket just at the top here. Then you can take this to the machine, flip it over so you can see the wrong side of your lining. And following the edge of your lining, you're going to base the pocket around all sides, about 5 millimeters from the edge. Once this is basted, you can just trim that pocket along the side edges. Then if you want to create separate pockets, you're going to draw a couple of lines and stitch along those lines. If you want, you can also install a couple of rivets. Take your key connector, and if you cannot press your fabric, draw a line in the center and apply double-sided tape on each side. Otherwise, you're going to fold the fabric in half and we can just press that fold flat. Then you're going to fold those two longer edges and bring them towards that crease in the center. Now you're going to fold the connector right sides together, just like that, and we're going to line up those folded edges. And you can clip it just along the one end. If you are using directional print, make sure you clip the bottom edge. Now we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to stitch that end here using 1 centimeter seam allowance. Now you're going to trim the seam allowance by half and you can just taper it at the corners. Here you go. Then you're going to flip it right side out. Make the corners nice and neat. Then you can line up those folded edges and clip them together. Now we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to top stitch along all 3 sides here. Now you're going to take one of your swivel hooks and we're going to fit that finished edge and wrap it around that swivel hook, just like that. You're going to fold it about 3 centimeters, clip that together. Then you can stitch that in place and install a couple of rivets. Once you've got that ready, you're going to take your front lining and we're going to line up that unfinished raw edge somewhere around that top edge here. So usually I like to measure about 3 centimeters from the side and just line it up like this. Clip that in place. But it's really up to you exactly where you want it to be. Then you're going to base that connector in place. Take your back lining piece and with right side facing each other, you're going to place it on top of the front. Line it up along the bottom edge and one of the sides and clip that together. Then you're going to bring the other side and line it up along the other edge and again clip them together. When you are ready, you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to stitch both seams using 1 centimeter seam allowance. Take the base lining and with right side facing each other, we're going to line it up along that bottom edge here. So keep the connector out of the way, match all 4 midpoints, and you can just line up the edge and clip it all around. If you clip the edge of the front and back lining just around those curved corners, it will be much easier for you to line them together. Once you've got that clipped, you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to sew the seam using 1 centimeter seam allowance. After you completed the seam, you can take your pinking shears and just trim the seam allowance by half. Take your card slots and fold the fabric wrong sides together along that first bottom line here. Press that flat. You can take this to the machine and top stitch along that folded edge. Next we're going to fold the fabric right sides together along that second line here. So you can just flip that to the other side, find that second line and just fold it like this and press that flat. Here we go. So this way we have created the first pocket here. Now you're going to find the third line, and again we're going to repeat the process. So with wrong sides together, we're folding the fabric along that line, bring that down, fold it along that line, press it flat. Then again, take this to the machine and top stitch along that finished edge. Now you can flip that down, find the next line and fold the fabric right side facing each other. Next you're going to take the following line and fold it wrong sides together, press that flat, and again you can stitch along the top edge, fold the fabric right sides together along the last line. Here we go, just like that. So you have 1, 2 and 3 pockets. Line up the edges along the sides, pin them together. Then we're going to take this to the machine and baste along the sides. Take your side panels and with right sides together you're going to place them on top of the card slots. Line them up along the bottom edge and the side and clip them together. So don't worry if the top edge is longer, there is a room for an error in case if you folded it slightly different. Then take the other side and clip that as well. Here you go, just like that. So you've got 2 of your side panels clipped. Now we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to sew off seams using 1 centimeter seam allowance. Okay, now you can take this to the pressing station, open the panels, and you can press the seam allowance towards the side panels, and we're going to top stitch along that finished seam. Once you've got that down, what I like to do is to mark my midpoints along the top and the bottom. Then you're going to take your front pocket piece, line it up the bottom edge, center it, and then we're going to trace the pocket. Now you can take a scissors and cut it out. Next you're going to take your front pocket stabilizer and fuse it to the back of the panel. Take your gussets and your zipper, and to make the process easier, you want to make sure that your gusset width is the same width as your zipper. So I already pre-trimmed that beforehand. So now you're going to place your zipper facing down on top of the external piece, and we're going to line it up along the short edges. If you want, you can baste that in place. Then you're going to take your lining piece and with right side facing down, you're going to place it on top of the zipper, line it up, then move your clips to hold everything together. When you are ready, you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to stitch both short seams using 1 centimeter seam allowance. Once you've got that stitched, you're going to flip the panels so they are wrong sides together. Just like that. So the zippers on one side, and we're going to line them up, clip them together, and then you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to stitch along those finished seams, and then we're going to baste along those 2 longer edges. Once you've got that ready, you're going to fold it in half and we're going to mark notches on each side. take the external front pocket piece and we're going to place the gusset right sides together, and we're going to line it up around the entire front pocket. So first match all the 4 midpoints, and then you can just line it up along the edge. It might be easier again if you just snip the gusset and the zipper around those curved corners. Once you're ready, you're going to sew the seam using 7mm seam allowance. So it might be easier if you can just open your zipper. Once you've got that stitched, you're going to take your front pocket lining piece, place it right side facing down, so the right sides are facing each other. You're going to match 4 midpoints and clip around all sides. Once you've got that clipped, you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to sew the seam using 7mm seam allowance. However, we're going to leave an opening around the bottom edge, so we can turn the pocket right side out. Once you've got that stitched, you're going to trim the seam allowance by half, but I would leave the full seam allowance around that opening here. Now you can turn the pocket right side out. Once you've got that ready, we need to close that opening along that bottom edge. So normally what I like to do is to fold this edge by 7mm, because that's the seam allowance. Press it flat, and then you can line up that folded edge just beyond that stitching. And just pin that in place for now. Then you can close that opening by hand using a ladder stitch. If you want, you can now top stitch around that seam. Take your card slot piece and we're going to line up the front pocket on top. So the right sides of both pieces are facing up, and you're going to line up the other side of the gusset and the zipper. So the wrong side of the gusset, where the lining is, will be facing the right side of your card slot pocket. So when you're ready, this should look like this. You have your pocket inside. Make sure your card slots are facing the right direction. Then you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to baste those two pieces together using 5mm seam allowance. Take your front piece and we're going to place the pocket on top, just like that, and you're going to line up the edge of the window around that gusset where you just stitched that previous seam. This step may be a little bit tricky and fiddly, and I like to always snip my fabric slightly just around those curved corners here. Then you're going to line up all 4 notches. So right side of the gusset, and right side of your front are facing each other. So now you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to sew the seam around using 7mm seam allowance. So I like to sew it from this side, so I can just fold my front piece on top and just stitch like this. Press the seam allowance away from the pocket. Now you're going to take this to the machine again and we're going to top stitch along that finished seam just to keep the fabric nice and flat. Once you've got that completed, you're going to install press snap both on the front and on the flap if you are making the backpack version. If you are making Ali's bucket bag, go ahead and complete your strap. I have a separate tutorial on how to make this strap. If you are making the Ali's backpack, complete your straps as well, the same way you would do the regular strap. However, only do it up to the point when you attach the sliders on one side. Take your strap connector and draw a line in the center, then apply double-sided tape on each side. We're going to peel that plastic cover and we're going to fold those edges towards the line in the middle. Now we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to top stitch along both sides, about 5mm from the edge. I've got that stitched. Now you're going to fold the strap connector in half and cut it so you have two separate pieces. Then if you are making a backpack version, you're going to take your connectors and a marking tool and you will need to measure 1 centimeter from the short edge along that top edge here. So I'm just going to mark on one side and then mark on the other side. Do that on both of your connectors. Then we're going to draw a line from that notch towards the bottom corner. Then we're going to cut the connectors along those lines. If you are making Ali's bucket bag, leave the edges straight. Then you can take a D-ring, fit the connector through the D-ring, fold it in half and you can clip that in place. Now you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to base the ends about 5mm from the edge. Take your external back piece and if you are making Ali's backpack, measure 2.5 centimeters from the bottom edge along both sides. That's the position of the strap connectors. And then you're going to measure 5 centimeters from the top edge and draw a line. So take your slanted connectors and we're going to place them at those notches. So your connector needs to be facing upwards. So line up that bottom corner at the notch and you can just clip them together and do that on the other side. There you go, just like that. Then you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to baste the connectors to the back piece. Take one of your shoulder straps and you're going to feed the raw edge through that D-ring here, from underneath the D-ring. The short folded end has to be on top. Then, making sure your strap is not twisted, you're going to feed that loose end through the strap adjuster. Just like that. So you're doing it in the opposite way than previously. Here we go. Then you can repeat that on the other strap. Once you have that done, you're going to take your strap and making sure your strap is not twisted. So imagine you are wearing your backpack. So this is the right side of your strap. You're going to place that loose end, the right side of that strap, against the back panel. So the right sides are facing each other. You're going to line up that short raw edge at that line that you just drawn and at the center. If you want, you can pin or clip that in place or use a double-sided tape. Then you're going to do that on the other strap as well. Then you can baste those straps to the back panel. Take your handle and on the wrong side of the fabric you can draw a line in the center. Then if you want, you can apply double-sided tape. Otherwise, you're going to take this to the pressing station and we're going to fold those edges towards the line in the middle. When you have that ready, you're going to fold the handle wrong sides together, just like that, and we're going to line up those two folded edges. Then you can take this to the machine and we're going to top stitch along those two long edges. Place the handle under your straps, fold it like this, and align the short raw edges at the line next to your straps. And then again, you're going to baste the ends to your back panel. Take your back trim, draw a line in the center, then you're going to fold those two longer edges towards that line. Remove the plastic cover from your double-sided tape, then place the back trim on top of your external back piece and line up that bottom edge 1 centimeter below the line. So I'm going to use my grid so I line it up properly, but you can measure it and make a notch on each side. Here we go, press it firmly with your fingers. Then you're going to top stitch along those two long edges, and if you want, you can install a couple of rivets. Now we're going to add a piping to our flaps. So take your external flap piece and we're going to line up the raw edge of our piping along the edge of our flap. Because I've made my own piping and I didn't cut the fabric on bias, I'm going to snip the piping around those curved corners, so it is easier for me to line it up. What I like to do is to remove the cord from the top seam here to reduce the bulk. So I'm going to unpick those stitches, pull my cord and just trim it off. This way it will be easier to stitch and the seam won't be as bulky. After you basted your piping, you're going to take the other flap piece, place it right side facing the external piece, line it up, and you can just clip all around. Here we go, just like that. Now we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to sew the seam using 1 centimeter seam allowance. Okay, once you've got that stitched, you're going to trim the seam allowance by half. If you have a pinking shears, use your pinking shears. Otherwise, you can just snip the fabric around the curves or cut a little V shape here to make sure your seam lays nice and flat. When you're ready, you can turn the flap right side out. You're going to top stitch along that finished seam. Then we can baste those 2 raw edges. Now we're going to attach our flap to our back piece. So move the handle and straps out of the way. Make sure you have midpoint marked along that raw edge, so you can match the midpoints on your back piece. Center it, and you can clip them together. Make sure the side with the magnetic snap is facing up and the right sides of your external pieces are facing each other. Now we're going to baste the flap about 5 millimeters from the edge. Now we're going to assemble the front and back pieces together. So take your external back piece and place it right side down, so the right sides are facing each other, and line it up along the side of a front piece, and you can clip that in place. If you are making backpack, keep the flap and the straps out of the way. Then you're going to bring the other side of your back and align it on the other side of the front. And again, you can clip them together. Here we go, just like that. Now we're going to sew both seams using 1 centimeter seam allowance. After you've stitched those 2 seams, you're going to taper the seam allowance on each side. Then you're going to match the midpoints and mark a notch on each side. Install backfit to your external base piece. Then if you are adding piping, you're going to take your piping, and what I like to do is to unpick one end of your piping, use a double-sided tape to just place it here, and I'm going to fold that short end by about 1 centimeter. Just like that. Then, to reduce the bulk, I'm going to trim the excess cord inside, so just beyond that fold. Then you're going to align the raw edge of your piping around the base panel. So I like to start somewhere in the middle here and just start clipping. Don't worry about clipping the beginning, leave it as it is, leave it loose, because then we're going to wrap those 2 ends together. So carry on clipping. Again, I'm going to snip the piping around the curves, so it's easier for me to line up. Then when you get to the beginning, you can overlap those 2 pieces, trim the excess, so about 1 centimeter beyond the first fold here. We're going to trim it. Then we're going to remove the cording from the seam allowance. Here we go. Now insert that end between the fabric, so the right side of your fabric faces the wrong side of your fabric, and wrap it around just like that. So we have a nice and neat finish here. Now you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to baste the piping around using 7mm seam allowance. After you pasted your piping, you're going to take your external bag or a backpack and we're going to place the base and align it at the bottom edge here. So with right sides together, you're going to line up the 4 notches. Then you can clip those 2 pieces together. If you need to, take a scissors and also snip slightly around those curved corners, so it is easier for you to line it up. When you are ready, you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to sew the seam using 1cm seam allowance. Now you can trim the seam allowance by half. Take all 4 top trims and make sure on 2 of them you marked your eyelet grommet placement on the right side of the fabric. Then on the wrong side of the fabric, on all 4 pieces, you're going to measure 2 centimeters from the top and then draw a line. Do that on all 4 pieces. Then you can apply double-sided tape just above that line. Now we're going to pair them. So with right side facing each other, place 1 piece on top of the other and line up on all sides. You can clip along those 2 shorter edges here. Now you're going to take this to the machine and we're going to stitch all 4 seams using 1cm seam allowance. Now you can taper seam allowance on each side. Then you can open the seam allowance. If you want, you can press it flat. Otherwise, take this to the machine and top stitch along both sides of the seam. When you have this ready, you're going to peel the plastic cover from your double-sided tape and we're going to fold that top edge towards the line. So you are basically making 1 centimeter fold. Once you have that ready, you're going to line up those seams to find a midpoint. And you can just clip that. Then you can take your lining and with right side facing each other, we're going to line it up so the seams will go around the sides. So where you mark those side notches, you're going to line up those notches with your seam. Then you can match your midpoints. Take this to the machine and sew the seam using 1 centimeter seam allowance. Then you can repeat that for the external pieces. You can trim the seam allowance by half. Then what you're going to do is to separate the pieces And on the lining, you're going to press the seam allowance towards the top trim. Then we're going to top stitch about 2 millimeters away from the seam. On the external pieces, you're going to fold the seam allowance towards the bottom, so away from your top trim. And then again, we're going to top stitch along the seam. However, this time we're going to stitch on the main panels. Okay, once you've got that, you're going to turn the external back or a backpack right side out. Just like that. Then you can insert the lining into the bag. So the wrong side of the lining and the wrong side of your external bag or backpack are facing each other. Make sure your back panels are facing each other and the front panels are facing each other. So place that inside. And you're going to line up the folded edges of your top trims. So match the side seams first and clip them in place. And just line it up all around. When you're making Ali's bucket bag, you will have to insert the strap connectors between both top trims, just along that side seams here. So I like to place some double-sided tape on my strap connector, and you're going to insert the strap connector between the pieces. So make sure it's centered as well along that seam. And repeat that on the other side. Here we go. And once you're ready, you're going to stitch around the top trim about 2 millimeters from the edge. Once you've got that top trim stitched, the next step is to install your eyelets or grommets. So do that now. On the wrong side of the stopper, draw a line in the center. Then apply double-sided tape on each side. Peel the plastic cover and fold the longer edges towards the line. Next, you can top stitch along both folded edges. When you have that ready, fold the stopper in half, right sides together, and align the shorter edges. We're going to sew the seam using 1 cm seam allowance. Mark the midpoints, then you can trim the seam allowance by half and turn the stopper right side out. Open the seam allowance. Then we're going to align the seam and the midpoints together, just like that. Use a couple of clips to hold it in place. Then you can take it to the machine and top stitch along the finished seam on both sides. Make your drawstring strap the same way you do a regular straps. Then you can feed it through the eyelets. When you do that, make sure your drawstring strap is not twisted. Next, insert the loose ends of the strap through the stopper. Then you can tie a knot on each end so you don't lose the stopper. And just like that, your Ali's bucket bag and Ali's backpack are now completed. Thank you for watching this tutorial. See you in the next video. Stay crafty, friends. Bye!